In 2021, I started this channel with only my mini lathe and some very basic hand tools. A few months before uploading my very first video, I bought this machine on the used market in pretty good condition and with some little toolings to start with. Very soon, the compound slide of my new machine seized up due to some design faults, and I thought we can do that better, and started to do my very first modification to the machine. Just for the fun of it, I filmed the project, uploaded it to YouTube, and this was the beginning of a somewhat successful journey of this channel. I remember some comments from the beginning of the channel that say not to center punch with a nail or not to scribe with a caliper, but I just had no other toolings at this time. Of course, a lot has changed since then, but especially at the beginning of this channel, I had to improvise a lot, as the only machine tool I had was the mini lathe and little later a small drill press. So every time I had to do some milling work, I tried to be creative to get the job done with the tools I had. That worked astonishingly well and trained thinking out of the box, but some lucky day an extremely generous viewer contacted me via email and asked if I want his little Proxxon milling machine. Of course I said yes, and a few weeks later I got the machine for a bottle of wine. This offered me a whole new cosmos of new machining possibilities and made more complex projects possible. The new milling machine served me extremely well over the years, and despite its small size and hobby-grade design, it worked extremely well, and I'm very thankful to have this machine. But now it's time for a change. There are some design characteristics on this machine which made working with it sometimes difficult. First of all, the whole machine is made out of cast aluminium. This is not only a very lightweight material, it is also very soft and not really meant for slideways of machine tools. On the aluminium ways, you see quite some wear over time. Normally, you want a machine tool to be made out of cast iron, which is very good at dampening vibrations and has very good gliding properties. Another thing which is not ideal on the machine is the round column. First, in terms of rigidity, this is not ideal, and second, if you want to adjust the milling head in height and loosen the two clamping screws on the back of the machine to bring the milling head higher or lower, you also lose the position of your milling cutter in X and Y direction, cause there is no guidance on the round column and the milling head can slide in any direction when the screws are loosened. This can be pretty annoying when height adjustment is needed within the operation of one part. And the third and last thing which brought me into trouble sometimes is that the machine can only clamp end mills up to 6 mm shank diameter size. Of course, the machine is only meant to do light milling work with small end mills in soft materials, but sometimes I wished I could clamp bigger tools. When I had to do this, I had to clamp the end mills in the drill chuck, which, of course, is not really recommended. And the spindle speed range from 900 to 6000 RPM is for smaller tools as well. I sometimes had troubles using larger drills with the spindle speed being too high, even at the lowest speed rate, and the spindle being not powerful enough for drill bits larger than about 6 mm. So all in all, the time was come to upgrade to a new milling machine. At first, my favorite was a specific machine from the company Seek, which also makes the famous mini lathe. I contacted them twice and asked for their support for my channel and if they want to sponsor me this machine, but unfortunately I never got an answer, which is kinda sad. So I came to this machine, a tabletop milling machine from the German manufacturer Wabeco. It is the type 11200, or whatever it is called and whatever it does mean, and it was made back in 1990. So you might ask, why did I choose exactly this machine? The truth is, I didn't really know. I haven't searched for this machine, but someday I found one on the used market for about 400 euro. I wanted to buy it immediately, but unfortunately I was too late and the machine was already sold. To compensate for this loss, I bought the next same machine, which unfortunately cost more than double the price. But I restored my peace of mind again. Where the Proxxon mill with about 15 kilos was easy to carry alone, the new Wabeco mill is not. It is completely made out of cast iron and weighs more than 4 times as much as the Proxxon mill. Unfortunately, I found out that not all parts are made out of cast iron, more to that later in the video, but with a little over 70 kilos, the new mill is a whole other class than the old Proxxon mill. And it's also a lot larger in general, with about 250mm travel in X and 150mm travel in Y direction. The Proxxon mill had theoretically a travel of 150mm in both axes, so the new machine has not that much more travel in the Y direction, but in X, which should be very useful. The machine looks pretty used and was repainted at some point in the past, obviously not the painter's best job. The ways of the machine though don't look too bad. I hope they are still in good shape. The table instead is not. It seems to be pretty mistreated in the past, including some very nasty bites from a greedy end mill, I guess. I have to clean the table and stone the surface so no markings can affect the accuracy of the clamping surface, but with the markings itself I think I have to live. The machine has an electronic motor control with direct belt drive and no gears. We'll see how well this proves to work. Unfortunately, it is not possible to reverse the motor direction of this machine. The motor itself looks to me like it came from a washing machine. So, might be that I change and upgrade the motor somehow in the future to a reversible, perhaps a servo drive motor, similar to the one I installed on my mini lathe. The machine has a quill with about 30mm of travel. Better than having no quill for sure, but 30mm is an exceptionally short travel. I think this has to do with the extremely short milling head, but we come to that later. The milling spindle has a Morse 2 taper for tool clamping. As the Proxxon mill had its own special collets, I don't have any of such Morse taper 2 tooling yet. So I contacted the tool supplier Ragotzky Gätje again and asked for their support. They provide all sorts of different tools and accessories for machining and machine tools, and helped me a bunch of times in the past. Thankfully, they again were so kind to send me a whole set of Morse taper 2 collets so I can start to work with the machine. They even custom made this neat little 3D printed collet holder for me. So thanks a lot to Ragotzky Gätje again. I put the link to their shop in the video description. Definitely check it out if you need tools or clamping accessories or whatever for your shop and machines. As happy as I am with my new machine, it's not the best one I know. Some design decisions on this machine are a mystery for me. For example, the block on the C slide is extremely short, providing very little support for the milling head. Just by looking, you can tell this can't be pretty stable. Don't know why they did this decision when building the machine. The milling head too is a little bit disappointing, as half of what you see is just the sheet metal cover and not the cast iron milling head. Oh, and did I say cast iron? I thought the milling head was made out of cast iron, but to my disappointment, it turned out that it is just made out of cast aluminium, and the most part of it is air. With the motor cover removed, you see how small the milling head and thus the support for the milling spindle and quill actually is. It looks almost ridiculous. Again, why would anyone design this and think, well, this is a good and rigid design? Another absurd thing, which is a little bit hard to show, are the Xaxis slideways. They are, in all seriousness, relieved. So there are pockets in the casting, which means the slideways only bear on 2 small strips on the sides. So why on earth would you do this? It's the least best place for saving weight on the castings. Perhaps anyone has an explanation for me. Might be that it doesn't affect the performance, accuracy and wear resistance at all, but for me it's a weird design, which I think will cause uneven wear over time. I don't know if I can address all of the shown oddities, but I already have some things to improve on this machine in my mind. First, the dials on the hand wheels are really small and with a resolution of only 1/10 of a millimeter, pretty coarse. So my plan is to make new and much larger dials for the Xaxis hand wheels. Another thing which I missed on my Proxxon milling machine was an automatic feed. I think I will add this at least in the X-axis. I already showed you the Morse Taper 2 milling spindle. I really would like to replace this spindle with an SK31. This would make changing tools much easier, as you have for each tool your own holder instead of having to change collets and clamping the tools in the collet. I think the newer versions of this machine, which is still sold by Wabeco with pretty much the exact same design, is available with an SK30 spindle. So perhaps it might be possible to change to the newer spindle with little effort. At least I have to check that. Apart from that, if you have tips on how to upgrade the spindle to SK30 or where to find an affordable replacement spindle, I would be happy for your advice. And I think I will add a digital readout to the machine, as it makes working a lot easier and faster compared to counting the numbers on the dials of the hand wheels. So you see, quite some things are planned, and despite some questionable design choices on this machine, I guess it will be a huge upgrade to my previous little Proxxon machine, as it is in any case a lot more rigid, allowing for heavier cuts and faster machining. But nonetheless, as said in the beginning of the video, I am extremely thankful to have the Proxxon machine. My greatest thanks again to the generous viewer who gave it to me, making a lot of cool projects in the past possible. For the end of this video, I will do, of course, a very first little test cut on my new machine. I don't have a set of 10mm clamping accessories for the T-slots of the table, but fortunately I found 2 T-nuts which kinda fit for clamping the vise for a first test cut. I took a 10mm carbide end mill, something which I couldn't clamp in my old machine, for the very first test cut. The drawbar is just a long screw and definitely not original. I think this will give a new short project in the near future. If anyone has the same machine and the dimensions of the original drawbar for me, I would be happy to get them. For the first cut, I choose a scrap piece of aluminium. You might say every machine can handle aluminium, but from what I came from, I wanted to start slow. I took the first cut with a 1mm depth of cut. It's really a whole new feeling of machining. Very quiet and smooth. The next cut I did with 2mm depth. You see the table shifting a little bit, perhaps too much play in the lead screw nut or the vase, but I also didn't clamp the table. The third cut now with 3mm depth. Something I could have never done on my previous machine, and everything running pretty smooth. You might see some wiggle in the table and shifting when changing the cutting direction, so I think I have to take the slides apart, clean everything and properly adjust the vase before really starting to use this machine. But the first impression is pretty promising. So I'm extremely interested in what you think about my new machine and the decision and thoughts on this specific model. What would you modify or add to the machine, and what would you like to see to be made? I appreciate your thoughts in the comments. So thank you all for watching, and till next.